You need to leave my store right now or security will make sure you do. The voice cracked like a whip across the pristine silence of the Lexington Avenue showroom. Glass sparkled, time paused, and in the center of it all stood a black woman in a navy blazer, still, composed, and dangerously calm. She didn't flinch, she didn't shout, she didn't explain. Because when Maya Collins, founder and CEO of one of America's most prestigious luxury jewelry brands, walked into her own flagship store that morning, she expected excellence, not exile. But in a world where skin color still speaks louder than titles, she was mistaken for a trespasser in her own empire. What Karen Doyle, the store manager with a Connecticut pedigree and a Harvard-sized ego, didn't know was this: the woman she was trying to humiliate had more power in her silence than Karen would ever hold in her shrieking. And what happened next? Inside that store, in front of stunned customers and watchful cameras, would not just shake the Lexington Avenue location, it would expose a racist double standard running deep in the luxury world, and remind everyone watching that black excellence doesn't need permission. If you believe respect should never depend on skin color, then like, subscribe, and drop a comment with the word respect and the country you're watching from. You're about to witness a story not just of injustice, but of silent power. Now, let's rewind. Before the crowd, before the cameras, before the name Maya Collins shattered Karen's carefully manicured delusion, we begin as all storms do, with silence. It was always the Bracelet first. At exactly 5:03 a.m., when Halston City still wore the hush of pre-dawn fog and the skyline blinked like a tired sentry, Maya Collins opened a small velvet box beside her bed. Inside, a weathered silver bracelet, not pristine, not fashionable, but priceless. It bore dents from a bus handle in Atlanta, a chip from a Chicago winter, and a softness around the clasp from being opened and closed by love-worn hands. It had belonged to her grandmother, a woman who had never walked through the front doors of a fine jewelry store, let alone owned one. The same woman who once cleaned offices at night so her granddaughter could read by fluorescent light. Now that granddaughter Maya was CEO of Vera Grace, a luxury jewelry brand with 48 showrooms across the country and a reputation for elegance built not on old money, but old scars turned into sparkle. She fastened the bracelet to her wrist with steady fingers. It was a ritual, not for luck, but for memory. It reminded her that success should never outshine soul. Downstairs, her 2003 Honda Civic waited like a faithful dog. She could afford a Rolls. People had offered to send a Bentley, even a driver, but she always said the same thing. This car got me through the storm. It deserves the sunrise too. Today's visit would be to the Lexington Avenue showroom, the flagship, the one she had designed herself, down to the curve of the crystal-lit display cases. She never announced these visits. She preferred to see things as they really were, unfiltered. As she pulled out of her driveway, the streets of Halston were still draped in stillness. The Civic moved quietly between Teslas and German imports. No one gave it a second look. But Maya knew. Somewhere in that showroom, something was off. She didn't know why. She didn't need to. Years of being underestimated had taught her to listen to silence and trust the heaviness that came with it. Today, she wasn't just wearing the bracelet, she was carrying its legacy into the fire. The doors of the Lexington Avenue showroom parted with a soft chime. Inside, everything gleamed. Glass displays shimmered with diamonds. Light jazz floated from discreet ceiling speakers. The floor tiles, imported from Italy, reflected the morning sun just beginning to sneak through the beveled windows. Maya stepped in. To any other customer, the room might have seemed perfect. But Maya's eyes, trained by years of detail, caught the flaws immediately. A tilt in the main necklace stand, dust on a spotlight bulb, and something worse, a tension in the air, subtle but sharp, like static before a storm. She moved quietly between display cases, taking in the feel of the space. Her store was meant to be a place where elegance met dignity, but the energy here felt curated, guarded, cold. And then came the voice. "Can I help you with something?" Too sweet, too forced, too early. Maya turned. A woman in her late 30s stood by the centerpiece display, sleek blonde bob designer heels, eyes full of judgment thinly veiled behind corporate courtesy. Karen Doyle, store manager. Her eyes flicked to Maya's navy blazer, her modest heels, her absence of diamonds. Then down to the keys in her hand. A Honda key fob. Maya smiled softly, out of politeness. Just browsing, she said. Karen's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Well, welcome. We carry some of the most exclusive pieces in the city. If you'd like to see something in particular, I'll just need to know your budget range. Behind the counter, Naomi Tran, a young sales associate, glanced up then paused. Her eyes lingered just a beat too long on Maya's face, as if something about her seemed familiar. But she said nothing. Maya's fingers touched the edge of the display case. The Aurora collection, she said evenly. I'd like to take a look. Karen blinked. The smile faltered almost imperceptibly. Our Aurora pieces begin at 200,000, she replied, her tone sharpening just enough to register. I understand, Maya said, her voice calm. I'd still like to see them. Karen didn't move. Not yet. She was calculating, doing that silent math some people do when a black woman makes a luxury request. Maya recognized the rhythm. She'd seen it in boardrooms, on planes, in five-star hotels. It was the hesitation of someone who couldn't compute confidence and color at the same time. Outside, the Civic sat quietly by the curb. Inside, the air had already begun to crack. Karen Doyle hesitated just long enough for Maya to notice. Then, with exaggerated grace, she reached for the velvet-lined key at her hip and unlocked the Aurora collection case. This line is reserved for serious buyers, she said. Her voice now an octave lower, carefully measured, almost rehearsed. The necklace alone retails at $350,000. Maya didn't flinch. She stepped closer. And like a jeweler, not a shopper, she examined the diamonds with a precision that startled Karen. Her finger hovered above the centerpiece necklace. This cut, Maya said, is radiant, Colombian origin, near flawless clarity. But Karen's eyes narrowed. The prongs on the left side are slightly uneven. The symmetry's off by 1/16 of a millimeter. I'd adjust the setting if I were the lead designer. There was a pause. An uncomfortable one. The kind that cuts through condescension faster than a credit score ever could. Karen's mouth parted slightly. How did you... But she caught herself. Her tone had cracked. For a split second, something had shifted in her recognition. Maybe. But pride rushed back in before understanding could take root. Our pieces are crafted by master artisans, she replied stiffly, reasserting control. And I'm sure they are, Maya said gently, still inspecting the piece. But precision matters. Behind the counter, Naomi Tran was no longer pretending to adjust inventory. Her eyes had not left Maya since she spoke about the diamond cut. She reached quietly for her phone, opening a tab, typing, searching. Something about the woman before her triggered memory. A photo, a newsletter, a face on a magazine page. Meanwhile, Karen reached for another piece, a smaller bracelet. Perhaps something more accessible, she offered. Maya's lips pressed together, not in anger, not yet, but in quiet acknowledgement that the moment she had anticipated her entire career had arrived again. This wasn't about money. This was about assumption, and what it meant to walk into a space you built and still be seen as someone who doesn't belong. Just then, the bell above the door chimed. A tall, elegant white couple entered, crisp linen, tailored slacks, all pearls and pedigree. The Fairbanks, old money clients. Karen lit up like showroom glass under a spotlight. Mr. and Mrs. Fairbanks. How lovely to see you again, she beamed, her entire body turning away from Maya, dismissing her without a word, as if she had disappeared into the wallpaper. To the couple, she gushed, we just received a new shipment perfect for your anniversary. And And to Maya, nothing. Not a nod, not a gesture, just a single, dismissive glance. One that spoke louder than any insult could. Naomi watched, frozen. Maya stood motionless beside the open case, fingers still hovering over the diamonds she had once designed on napkins and coffee receipts. She could hear Karen offering champagne, comfortable chairs, stories behind each piece, words never offered to her. And as the couple laughed softly, admiring a ring she had personally approved in the Bangkok workshop last spring, Maya turned her gaze to her reflection in the display glass. She didn't need proof. She had lived this scene before. But today, in her own store, wearing her grandmother's bracelet, it cut deeper. And yet she said nothing, not yet. 15 minutes. That's how long Maya Collins had been standing beside the Aurora collection open, glowing, untouched like a guest in her own legacy. 15 minutes of being invisible. Across the room, Karen Doyle was in her element, catering to the Fairbanks couple with the elegance of a red carpet concierge. She laughed when they laughed. She offered them champagne with a practiced flick of her wrist. She placed velvet cushions under every piece they touched. She knelt to adjust a footstool beneath Mrs. Fairbanks's heels. Maya watched it all. Watched Karen glide through a performance of exceptional service with flawless ease, a performance that did not include her. Not when she entered, not when she asked for Aurora, not now, when she still stood waiting, hands folded, dignity intact. She didn't mind waiting. What she minded was being erased. Behind the counter, Naomi Tran had noticed. She'd seen the shift, the way Karen's voice changed, the way her body turned away from Maya and toward the Fairbankses, like a sunflower seeking a more appropriate sun. Naomi had taken a step forward twice only to freeze under Karen's warning glances. Still, Maya said nothing. Her fingers rested lightly on the bracelet at her wrist, tracing the curve of silver like a prayer. But the calm it gave her earlier had dulled now, replaced by the quiet throb of restraint wearing thin. And when Karen began to present a necklace Maya herself had named Memory Keeper, a piece inspired by her grandmother's stories, something inside her snapped clean. Maya moved forward, smooth, silent, unapologetic. "Excuse me," she said, voice low but unshakable. "I'm still interested in the Aurora piece." Karen turned, blinking, surprised that Maya hadn't wandered off to the cheaper displays like she'd hoped. Her mask slipped, her tone sharpened. "Look," Karen said, lips tight. "Those pieces require a serious financial commitment." Maya met her eyes without blinking. "I'd like to purchase the Aurora necklace." Karen paused, then laughed, not politely, not awkwardly, mockingly. "I'm going to need to see proof of funds," she said. "Credit cards, bank statements, something that shows you can actually afford it." The air turned, the temperature dropped, and in the space between Maya's silence and her next breath, a storm began to form. For a moment, Maya didn't speak. She let the words, "proof of funds," settle like ash on the showroom floor. Customers turned subtly. Even the soft jazz filtering from the ceiling speakers seemed to quiet itself. Maya tilted her head slightly, her voice calm. "Is that your standard policy for all customers?" Karen blinked too fast, too many times. "For purchases of that size, yes," she said quickly. "It's company protocol." Maya's eyes flicked across the room. The Fairbanks couple were now sipping champagne and holding a ring worth more than the necklace Maya had asked for. Not once had Karen asked them for a credit check. Not once had she questioned their capacity to pay. "Interesting," Maya murmured. She let that word hang. Interesting, because it was, and everyone in the room knew exactly why. Naomi stiffened behind the counter. She'd seen it too. Felt it. That quiet shift in tone from "welcome" to "prove you belong." And something inside her snapped. Quietly, she pulled out her phone beneath the counter and began typing, "Maya Collins, Vera Grace CEO." Maya turned back to Karen. "Would you like to see my credit report now? Or perhaps we can skip the theatrics." Karen flushed. Her voice sharpened. "Ma'am, this isn't personal. It's just our policy." "No, it's not," Maya interrupted softly. "It's your judgment." Now Andre Bell, the assistant manager, looked up from the office hallway, eyes narrowing. He hadn't been on the floor until now, but he caught the temperature shift instantly. "Karen," he called gently. Voice diplomatic. "Everything all right?" Karen waved him off, her cheeks coloring. But Maya wasn't done. She stepped back from the display, not retreating, but claiming space. "From the moment I walked in, you've made assumptions about my clothes, my car, my skin." "Excuse me," Karen scoffed, laughter bubbling up again, defensive, brittle. "You treated me like I didn't belong," Maya continued. "But here's the thing, Karen. I do belong. In fact, I belong here more than anyone else in this room." Karen's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Because for the first time, doubt had cracked her certainty. And in the stillness of the store, other customers began to shift, watching, waiting. Naomi's fingers paused on her screen. And Andre, he stepped forward. "Karen," he said slowly, "you might want to stop talking now." But Karen didn't. Not yet. Because people like her didn't stop until they were made to see. Karen's composure finally cracked. Her voice rose, sharp and slicing, loud enough to silence the murmurs blooming across the showroom. "You know what? I've had enough of this," she snapped, gesturing wildly. "You need to leave. Right now." Maya didn't move. She simply stood there, spine straight, shoulders square, as if her stillness alone had weight. And it did. But Karen wasn't done. She turned toward the security desk, where Darius Cole, the showroom guard in a crisp gray uniform, had been watching everything from a distance with arms folded and jaw tight. "Darius," she called, pointing at Maya like a threat. "Escort this woman out. Now." There was a pause. A long one. Then Darius stepped forward, slow, deliberate, like a man stepping onto thin ice. "Ma'am," he said carefully, looking from Karen to Maya. "She hasn't done anything wrong." Karen's face flushed a deeper red. "She's disrupting the store." "She's standing still," Darius replied. "She's making a scene." "No, ma'am," he said, voice steady. "You are." It was the first moment Maya allowed herself to breathe deeply. Not because she needed someone to defend her, but because Darius had chosen integrity over hierarchy. And in a place like this, that was no small act. Karen's voice pitched up again. "If you don't do your job, I'll make sure this is your last day here." Now the room was no longer quiet. Several customers turned. Phones came up discreetly, screens glowing, recording. Maya glanced around. She saw Naomi Tran, frozen behind the register, her eyes wide. She saw Andre Bell, the assistant manager, now stepping fully onto the floor. His face a mask of caution and quiet readiness. And she saw Karen breathing hard, hair coming loose from its perfect part, voice rising not from professionalism but from panic. "Get her out," Karen hissed, her finger trembling. "Before something happens, before she steals something." It landed like a slap. Even the Fairbanks couple stopped pretending to browse. Mrs. Fairbanks slowly lowered the ring she was holding. Her husband said nothing, but his gaze dropped to the floor. That was it, the moment, the ugly truth spoken aloud. Maya turned to face Karen directly, her voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to slice glass. "You just called me a thief." Karen stammered, I didn't." "Yes," Maya said, eyes locked on hers. "You did." The room was still again, but it was no longer silent. It was holding its breath, waiting. And somewhere behind her, Naomi whispered just loud enough for Andre to hear, "I think I know who she is." There are silences that feel heavy, and then there are silences that feel like a secret about to explode. That was the kind now hanging in the Lexington Avenue showroom, thick, humming, fragile. Maya Collins stood still, her eyes never leaving Karen Doyle, whose hands were now twitching at her sides. unsure whether to fold, point again, or hide altogether. Across the room, Naomi Tran had gone ghost white. She had typed the name into her phone minutes ago, Maya Collins, CEO Vera Grace, just to be sure. She hadn't expected the search results to confirm what her instincts already screamed. The poised black woman standing at the center of this storm was the woman who signed her paychecks. And yet Karen still had no idea. Naomi turned to Andre Bell, the assistant manager, whose face had turned stone cold. She slipped her phone toward him under the counter, the screen still open on a company newsletter from last quarter. Front page. Maya Collins standing in front of the Vera Grace headquarters, arms crossed, that same silver bracelet visible at her wrist. Andre's eyes scanned it once, then twice, and then he looked up at Maya, then at Karen. His lips parted slightly, but he said nothing. Not yet. Because there are some truths that don't need to be spoken. They just need to be allowed to land. Karen, meanwhile, was pacing now, nervous energy vibrating off her like static. "I don't care what her attitude is," she muttered, mostly to herself, but loud enough for others to hear. "This isn't a shelter. This is Vera Grace." Maya raised one eyebrow. "Correct," she said softly. "It is Vera Grace." Karen turned sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" But before Maya could answer, another voice cut in. Calm, professional, but laced with meaning. "Karen," Andre said, stepping forward, "I think you should stop talking." Something in his tone made Karen hesitate. Something she didn't recognize but should have. Because for the first time, she wasn't in control of the room anymore. And the shift had only just begun. Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She reached calmly into her blazer pocket, pulled out her phone, and unlocked it with a slow, deliberate swipe. Karen blinked. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice quivering between defiance and dread. Maya didn't answer. Her fingers moved with purpose, scrolling to a contact labeled VG, board, priority. She tapped, then lifted the phone to her ear. "Sarah, it's Maya," she said, her voice firm. Level, the kind of voice that didn't ask permission to be heard. "I'm at the Lexington Avenue showroom. Emergency board meeting. Now." Karen's mouth fell open. "You're what?" Maya didn't look at her. "Yes," she continued on the call, her eyes scanning the room, now utterly silent. "Get everyone on. No, not Monday. Now. I'll hold." Naomi stopped breathing. Andre took one slow step backward, like he had just witnessed lightning strike an oak tree. Darius Cole, still at his post, stiffened. His instincts had told him something felt off. Now he was sure. Dead sure. Karen, on the other hand, floundered like a woman caught in an undertow she didn't see coming. "Excuse me," she sputtered. "Who do you think you are?" Maya slowly turned to her. Her eyes were calm. Her mouth was still. But her silence roared. Karen took a step forward, faltering. "You can't just call whoever. You can't override store management." "This isn't your store," Maya said. And that was the crack. A clean fracture down Karen's understanding of the world. She let out a short, nervous laugh. "I'm the store manager. I decide what happens here." Maya tilted her head. "Oh, you decide." Her voice was barely above a whisper but carried like thunder. "Yes," Karen snapped. "And if you think some phone call will change that." Maya interrupted, not with a shout, but a sentence carved from steel. "I built this store." She let it hang, let Karen swallow it whole. Then added, "And I built the company you work for." The room did not move, not a breath, not a blink. And through the speaker of her phone, Maya's assistant's voice echoed. "All board members are on the line. Ms. Collins, ready when you are." "All board members are on the line. Ms. Collins, ready when you are." The voice on speaker was crisp, calm, unmistakably professional. The moment it ended, the room split in half between those who understood what had just happened and those who were still catching up. Karen stood frozen, her mouth slightly open. Wait. Collins. Maya lowered the phone just enough for her voice to cut through. Yes, Maya Collins, CEO, founder of Vera Grace. Karen's face drained of all color. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Just the barest sound, a breath caught between disbelief and dread. Naomi clutched her phone tighter, now visibly trembling. She turned the screen toward Andre, who had already guessed, but still took one stunned look at the company newsletter headlined CEO Spotlight Maya Collins, Designing a Legacy. And there she was. The same woman standing in the room, the same navy blazer, the same bracelet, now glowing like a badge of silent power. Oh my God, Naomi whispered. Andre nodded slowly, his voice barely audible. She owns all of this. Karen staggered back one step. You're lying, she said, but it was hollow, the kind of denial built on sand. This is some game, some act. No, Andre said quietly, it's not. By now, several customers had stopped pretending to shop. One man near the window was recording with his phone in full view. Another whispered, "That's her. That's really her." Even the Fairbanks couple, once treated like royalty, stood still, watching with the growing awareness that they were witnessing a reckoning. Karen's voice cracked again, desperate. "Why didn't you say anything when you walked in?" Maya didn't blink. "I shouldn't have to." That was it. That was the lesson. A black woman should not have to announce her power to be treated with dignity. Not in her company. Not in her store. And certainly not to someone like Karen Doyle. The silence that followed was different now, not tense, but tilted. Everyone in the room had shifted their gaze, their posture, their assumptions. The only person who hadn't... Karen. But her time was running out. Maya took one step forward. Not hurried, not hostile, but deliberate, like a conductor preparing to lead an orchestra through a final movement. She glanced around the showroom at the diamond displays, the shocked faces, the trembling hands holding smartphones mid-record. Then she spoke. "There's been a violation of company values today," she said, clearly and without hesitation. Her voice carried through the room like silk wrapped around steel. "I built Vera Grace not just to sell jewelry, but to create a space where elegance is matched with respect, where customers, no matter how they look, or what they wear, or where they come from, are treated with dignity." No one breathed. Karen stood frozen, eyes darting between Maya and the growing crowd of witnesses, as if she were trying to will herself invisible. "But today," Maya continued, "I was denied service. I was profiled. I was spoken to as if I didn't belong in the very space I designed from the ground up." Her eyes moved to the Fairbanks couple, who lowered their gaze. She didn't need to call them out. Her words had already landed. "I was treated like an intruder," she said, voice steady. "When in fact, I am the architect of everything you see here, from the display lighting to the layout of the floor tiles." Andre stood motionless behind the counter, the newsletter on Naomi's screen still open beside him. "I've seen discrimination," Maya said, taking another slow step toward the center of the showroom. "But rarely have I seen it so casual. So confident." Naomi swallowed hard. Darius Cole, the security guard, shifted his stance but didn't move, his face calm, but his jaw locked tight. Maya turned, her eyes now resting squarely on Karen Doyle, whose chest rose and fell in shallow, panicked breaths. "This store bears my signature," Maya said softly. "But your behavior this morning, that does not." Karen's lip quivered. "I didn't know." "That's the problem," Maya cut in. "You looked at me and decided who I was. And worse, you thought you had the right to decide." Karen's mask finally cracked. The flush on her cheeks had faded into a pale, ghostly hue. Her lips trembled, her shoulders curled inward, suddenly small inside the blazer that once gave her power. "I didn't know," she whispered, barely audible. I didn't realize. Maya stood still, watching her, the same way a sculptor examines the cracks in a once polished statue. Karen's voice cracked again, louder this time. I wasn't trying to be racist. I was just protecting the store. Maya raised an eyebrow. Her silence was more devastating than outrage. Please, Karen said, voice growing shrill, frantic. I have children. I have a mortgage. I made a mistake. But, no. Maya said quiet, but immovable. You didn't make a mistake. You made a decision. Karen blinked. You decided that my appearance, my presence, my skin, didn't fit your version of who belonged here. Tears spilled down Karen's cheeks. It wasn't personal. It always is, Maya interrupted. Every time someone like me walks into a place built by someone like me, and is still treated like a threat. Karen clutched the edge of the display case for support. Her knuckles had turned white. I'll do better. I'll take training. Sensitivity classes. Please. Don't ruin my life over one bad moment. Maya's gaze didn't soften. Karen, she said evenly. This wasn't one bad moment. This was a series of choices that revealed who you are when no one's watching. Behind them, the room remained still. Even the air felt like it had shifted thicker now, weighed down by truth. You meant every word, Maya said, her voice sharper now, deliberate. You meant every look, every assumption, every dismissal. Karen collapsed onto the nearest stool, the same one she had so graciously offered to the Fairbanks earlier, and buried her face in her hands. The irony did not go unnoticed. Maya let the silence stretch just long enough. Then, turning to the employees still watching, she spoke with quiet command. Your behavior, she said, addressing Karen without looking at her, does not reflect Vera Grace, and your presence here ends now. Karen looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks. You're firing me. Maya nodded once. Your last paycheck will be processed today. Naomi closed her eyes, letting out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Andre stood taller behind the counter, and Darius, still silent, nodded ever so slightly. Justice had arrived. Not with shouting, not with spectacle, but with clarity. Maya turned slowly, her eyes scanning the space like a curator assessing what remained after a storm. Karen sat hunched near the counter, a shattered silhouette of the control she once held. But Maya was done with her. The real story now, the real weight, was with the others. She looked first to Andre Bell. You stepped forward when the room pulled back, Maya said, voice calm but unmistakably resolute. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't challenge for attention. But you saw what was wrong and you acted. Andre swallowed hard. I didn't know it was you, he said. I know, Maya replied. That's what made it matter more. Next, she turned to Naomi Tran, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor tiles. You saw me before you knew who I was. Naomi's eyes welled. I was just doing what felt right. Maya nodded, then let that guide you. Always. A small sob escaped Naomi's throat, not of shame, but of relief, of recognition. This was the company she had applied to work for. This was the woman she had admired from afar. And finally, Maya turned to Darius Cole, the quiet force at the edge of the room. You were asked to remove me, she said softly, but you refused. Darius didn't move, didn't sit right. No, it didn't, Maya said. And your judgment reminded me why security isn't just about protection, it's about principle. The words landed, not just for him, but for everyone watching. Because this wasn't just a firing, this was a recentering. In a store built to showcase brilliance, Maya had chosen to showcase something rarer: character. She stepped back, now facing all three employees. As of this moment, she said, Karen Doyle no longer represents Vera Grace. She let that settle, then added, and those of you who did will... Andre stood straighter. Naomi wiped her eyes but held her head up. Darius nodded once, the kind of nod that came from a place deeper than pride, from dignity. The showroom wasn't quiet now because it was stunned. It was quiet because it was listening. And Maya Collins had earned the right to be heard. Maya stood at the center of the Lexington Avenue showroom, framed not by diamonds or glass, but by truth. And now, it was time to rebuild, not with apologies, but with decisions. She turned to Andre Bell, still standing tall near the register, though his eyes hinted at disbelief. "You tried to de-escalate before this turned into a scene," Maya said. "You acted with professionalism when others reacted with ego." Andre nodded, unsure where she was going. "As of today," Maya continued, "you are no longer the assistant manager." He blinked. "You're the store director of this location." The room shifted. There was no applause, just a collective inhale like the air itself recognized what had just been restored. Andre's lips parted. "Miss Collins, I don't know what to say." "You already said it," Maya replied, "when you told Karen to stop talking." A ripple of tension melted from his shoulders. Behind him, Naomi Tran wiped a fresh tear from her cheek. Maya turned to her. "You acted with empathy. You saw what was happening and didn't look away even when it would have been easier to stay silent." Naomi swallowed hard. "You're now the assistant manager of this showroom." Naomi's hands flew to her mouth. For a moment, she couldn't speak, couldn't move. She just nodded, eyes brimming with something Maya knew well-earned pride. Then Maya faced Darius Cole, the quiet sentry whose integrity had anchored the entire room. "You reminded me what security really means," she said. "Not just locking doors, but standing guard over what's right." Darius gave a single respectful nod. "Just did what I knew was fair." "That's exactly why you'll receive a raise, effective today, and a formal commendation from headquarters." Karen, now nothing more than a shadow in a chair, said nothing. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She simply watched as the titles she once believed belonged to her world were handed to people she never truly saw. Maya let her gaze sweep the room one last time. This wasn't a promotion ceremony. It was a realignment of values, of voice, of vision. And Maya had made it crystal clear, power didn't live in titles. It lived in action. By now, nearly every customer in the Lexington Avenue showroom had their phones out. Some had been filming quietly for minutes. Others had just started when they realized this wasn't a routine disagreement. This was a reckoning, a live, unscripted confrontation between injustice and the woman who built the room it tried to silence. Maya saw the cameras. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. Instead, she stepped forward, just enough for her voice to carry to every corner of the room. "To those recording," she said calmly, "I see you, and I'm not asking you to stop." A few phones lowered, uncertain. Maya shook her head gently. "No. Let them post. Let them share. Let them see what happens when someone's dignity is tested and reclaimed." She turned toward the largest lens in the room, a middle-aged man with a steady hand and eyes wide with respect. "Let them see," she said again, "what it looks like when power doesn't raise its voice, it raises its standard." The man nodded and kept recording. Karen, still seated to the side, looked away. Her body had shrunk into the chair she once used to impress VIP clients, the same chair she never offered Maya. Naomi was wiping her cheeks again, but this time the tears weren't from fear. They were from watching truth take its rightful place. Maya turned slightly, letting the room feel the full weight of her presence, not as a CEO, not even as a victim, but as a woman unwilling to be reduced. "This isn't about me," she said. "This is about what we allow, what we excuse, and what we refuse to stay silent about." She touched her bracelet gently, reverently. "My grandmother never got to walk into stores like this," she said, voice softer now. "And if she had, someone like Karen might have made her feel smaller than the glass beneath her shoes." Maya looked up again, meeting every eye she could. "I built Vera Grace so that no one would ever feel that way again." And with those words, she reclaimed not just the room, but the narrative. For a long, quiet moment, no one moved. Maya stood steady, her final words still echoing like the tail end of a symphony, soft but undeniable. the kind of truth that didn't need to be shouted to be felt. Then, slowly, a man stepped forward from the crowd. He was in his 70s, dressed in a modest tan blazer, and had been silent the entire time, watching from the far side of the store with his arms crossed and eyes sharp. He didn't raise a phone. He raised his voice. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his head with quiet respect. "You reminded us what leadership looks like." The words hit like a benediction. Maya turned to him gently, her posture softening just a touch. "Thank you," she replied, as if those were the only two words worthy of the weight he had offered. He wasn't done. "I came in today looking for a gift for my wife," he said, "but I think I found something better." A few customers behind him nodded. Some lowered their phones. Others kept recording, but their eyes had shifted from curiosity to conviction. This wasn't just a viral moment anymore. It had become a mirror. A reflection of what happens when someone chooses silence, and what happens when someone like Maya chooses clarity. Maya offered the man a small, sincere smile. "She's a lucky woman," she said. He chuckled. "I'm the lucky one." The tension in the room cracked just a little, not with laughter, but with release. Maya looked around the store again. The displays, the lights, the people. This was supposed to be just another unannounced visit, a quiet check-in. But instead, it had become something far more vital, a public declaration of values. And it hadn't been planned. It had been provoked and answered. She took one final breath, then turned to Andre, Naomi, and Darius, the three who had stood with principle. "We have work to do," she said quietly. And they understood. Because justice, once spoken aloud, demands to be carried forward. The room still held the echo of Maya's presence, strong, grounded, untouchable. But life, like business, must move. And Maya knew that justice isn't just what you say in the heat of confrontation. It's how you proceed afterward when no one's clapping, and the cameras begin to lower. She turned to Andre Bell, now officially store director, whose breath had finally steadied. "Let's keep the store open," she said calmly. Andre blinked. "You want to continue operations? Today?" Maya nodded, especially today. There was a moment of quiet hesitation across the floor, as if the room had to recalibrate its reality. Just an hour ago, Karen Doyle ruled this space with forced smiles and coded standards. Now, she was gone, disgraced, exposed. But Maya was still here, and the doors were still open. "We don't retreat from a problem," Maya continued, her voice carrying not just authority, but hope. "We rise through it." She turned slightly, addressing the remaining customers, some still hovering uncertainly near displays. "To those still browsing," she said, "I want to thank you for your patience. If you choose to stay, we will serve you with the respect every client deserves." A few customers nodded. One woman clutched a bracelet she'd picked out during the confrontation and gave a tentative smile. Another quietly placed his phone back in his pocket and walked to the counter, not to return an item, but to complete his purchase. Naomi Tran, now assistant manager, stepped into motion posture straighter than ever. "I'll be happy to assist you," she said to a couple browsing near the entrance, her voice calm, professional, and deeply human. Darius Cole, still at his post, radioed briefly to the backroom standard protocol, but his eyes followed Maya with renewed purpose. She wasn't just his CEO now, she was his reason for staying. And Maya, she simply walked toward the Aurora collection. The glass case was still open, the necklace still glowing beneath the lights she once helped calibrate. With both hands, she gently adjusted the angle of the display tray, correcting the very misalignment that had caught her attention when she first entered. A subtle gesture, but one that said, "This store isn't broken. It's being restored." As Maya adjusted the necklace display, she sensed Naomi hovering nearby. The young assistant manager, still adjusting to her new title, stepped forward with hesitation, her voice barely above a whisper. "Miss Collins, what should we do about the media?" Maya looked up slowly. "The videos," Naomi clarified. nodding toward a customer near the back who was still quietly uploading footage. They're already online. People are commenting. It's spreading fast. For a long second, Maya said nothing. She stood upright, hands at her sides, gaze scanning the room. She could almost feel the questions swirling just beneath the surface. Will she call legal? Will she demand takedowns? Will she issue a statement? But when she spoke, her voice was clear, unshaken. Let them post. Naomi blinked. You're sure? Maya nodded. Let the world see what happens when perception collides with power. Let them see what happens when someone walks into a room they built and is told they don't belong. Naomi let out a slow breath, then nodded, and smiled just a little. We have nothing to hide, Maya added. We never did, and I refuse to treat truth like a PR crisis. Darius, nearby, grunted with approval. Andre, standing beside the central register, chimed in. They'll probably turn this into headlines by morning. Good, Maya said. Make sure they spell Vera Grace correctly. It wasn't sarcasm. It wasn't bravado. It was strategy, the kind born not from corporate training, but from lived experience. Maya understood something many executives never learned. Silence protects the abuser. Visibility protects the truth. She moved through the store like she had always belonged because she had. But now, every step was being watched. Not with suspicion, but with reverence. At the entrance, the elderly gentleman from earlier held up his phone briefly and mouthed, "Thank you." Maya gave a single nod in return. She wasn't afraid of going viral. She had already gone visible in the most powerful way a black woman could by refusing to shrink. The day had settled into an unexpected rhythm. Customers were browsing again, quieter than usual, but more intentional. Naomi moved between cases with a gentle confidence. Darius resumed his station with his posture just a little prouder, and Andre, now store director, stood near the center counter, flipping through a tablet with inventory stats. Maya approached him. He straightened immediately, but she gave him a look that said, "Relax, you've earned this." "I just want to make sure I do this right," Andre said, his voice low. "You trusted me with something bigger than I expected." Maya studied him for a moment, not critically, but thoughtfully. "You're not just running a store now, Andre," she said. "You're carrying a standard." He looked at her, uncertain. "What do you mean?" "Exactly." She glanced around the showroom, the polished glass, the soft light, the still lingering memory of what had unfolded hours earlier. "Anyone can memorize sales pitches," she said. "Anyone can open a safe, restock diamonds, or hit quarterly targets." She paused, then added, "But not everyone can set a tone. Not everyone can recognize when respect is missing or speak up when silence is easier." Andre nodded slowly, her words sinking in deeper than any training manual ever could. "What happened today," Maya continued, "wasn't just about me. It was a test of everyone in this room, a test of values, and not everyone passed." He followed her gaze briefly toward the empty stool where Karen had sat before being dismissed. The memory still lingered. "I get that," Andre said. "I do." "Good," Maya replied. "Because leadership isn't about being right. It's about recognizing the moment you have the responsibility to make things right." Andre let out a breath, not heavy, but grounded. "I won't forget that. I'm counting on it." Maya placed a hand gently on the edge of the counter, the same counter where she'd once been denied access. "I'll be back soon," she added. Andre smiled, hopefully not under the same circumstances. Maya returned the smile, small but full of quiet fire. "Next time," she said, "I want to walk in and feel like I'm invisible for the right reasons." And with that, she turned toward the door, not walking away from the fire, but leaving it burning in the hands of someone who now knew how to carry it. The morning after the Lexington Avenue incident, Maya Collins arrived at Vera Grace headquarters in a plain black turtleneck and jeans, the kind of outfit that made people underestimate her before she opened her mouth. She preferred it that way. The elevator ride to the 27th floor was quiet. just the soft hum of assent and the weight of knowing that somewhere in thousands of phones and feeds her name was now circulating. As she entered her corner office, her assistant, Jordan, looked up from his laptop with wide eyes and half a breath. "They're calling it the CEO showdown," he said. Maya raised an eyebrow. Amused. "Let me guess. Hashtags." Jordan nodded. "Exposed in luxury. Black woman built it, and my personal favorite, Karen met Maya." She smiled, not out of pride, out of irony. The kind of smile that knows visibility often comes not by intention, but by confrontation. He handed her a tablet. "Legal says multiple outlets have reached out. Some want statements, others want interviews, but it's already spreading." Maya scrolled slowly. Her face, framed in stills from grainy phone videos, appeared beneath headlines like, "CEO confronts racism in her own store." "Silent Power, Maya Collins and the showroom standoff." "Elegance doesn't ask permission." Below the articles, comments poured in. Hundreds, thousands. Many from young black women, some from former employees, others from complete strangers who saw themselves in her stillness. Maya placed the tablet down gently. Jordan asked, "Should we respond, issue an official statement?" She shook her head. "It's already working," she said. The assistant tilted his head. "What is—" Maya looked out the window, not at the skyline, but at her own reflection in the glass. "Truth," she said. "And the reminder that leadership isn't performance, it's consistency under pressure." Jordan didn't speak. He didn't have to. He saw it now. As the whole world was beginning to see, Maya Collins wasn't trying to go viral. She was just refusing to go silent. The desk phone rang. Not her cell, not Jordan's direct line. The private landline Maya only gave to a select few. She picked it up without looking at the caller ID. "Maya Collins," a woman's voice replied, calm and warm. "Ms. Collins, this is Denise Rhodes. I'm calling on behalf of the National Equity Forum. We've been watching respectfully." Maya leaned back in her chair, instantly recognizing the name. Denise was known not for making headlines, but for making laws change behind the scenes. Quiet power. Her kind of woman. "I assume this isn't just a courtesy call," Maya said. Denise chuckled softly. "Not at all. We'd like to feature your experience not as a moment of outrage, but as a case study in professional leadership under duress." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You want to use the incident?" "No," Denise said gently. "We want to use your response." That caught Maya's attention. "We're preparing a national symposium," Denise continued, "on corporate dignity and unconscious bias in luxury service sectors. Your story is the perfect anchor." Maya was quiet for a beat. "Then I'm not interested in pity campaigns." "That's not what this is," Denise replied. "We don't want to showcase pain. We want to showcase standards." Maya sat forward, her eyes narrowing with interest. "You didn't cry in that store. You didn't yell. You didn't tweet in rage. You made decisions with clarity and consequence. That's not just rare. Ms. Collins, that's model-worthy." Maya's fingers tapped the desk once slowly. She had heard many offers in her career, features, panels, cover stories. But this wasn't about her. It was about what she made possible for others. Jordan looked over from his desk, sensing her shift in focus. Maya met his eyes and spoke into the receiver. "Send me the framework. If it aligns with what we stand for, we'll talk." "Thank you," Denise said. "And for what it's worth, we're not trying to make you famous. We're trying to make this normal." The line went dead. And Maya smiled, not for the attention, but because someone finally understood the assignment. Later that afternoon, Maya sat at the head of a long conference table, surrounded by 7 members of her internal advisory circle, hand-picked over the years for their insight, discretion, and refusal to sugarcoat truth. The room was quiet, respectfully so. No one offered congratulations. They knew better. At last, Nia Chambers, VP of Brand Strategy, broke the silence. "Are you afraid," she asked, "that this makes you too visible?" The question hung in the air like a loaded chandelier, heavy, glittering, impossible to ignore. Maya didn't answer right away. She looked out the window behind her, where downtown Halston shimmered in the late light. Cars moved like slow rivers. People below had no idea they were walking beneath a decision that would echo far beyond the showroom. Too visible. She remembered what that used to mean. Back when she was 23 and pitching her first designs to investors who said her look didn't match the luxury clientele. Back when she learned to keep her voice low, her jewelry understated, her skin unapologetic but soft enough not to be threatening. Too visible meant being targeted. Too visible meant being undermined before being understood. But now, she turned back to the room. Her voice was quiet, but this time, not to shrink herself. "Not anymore." One of the men at the table, Devin, from finance, shifted slightly, as if he'd felt a current in the floor. Maya continued, "We've built Vera Grace on discretion and taste, but dignity doesn't get to hide anymore." Nia leaned back in her chair, processing that. "Do I like the attention?" Maya added. "No, I never did. But if being visible is the cost of setting a standard..." She paused, then nodded to herself. "Then visibility is part of the brand now." Around the table, heads nodded, not performatively but in recognition, in alignment. Maya picked up a pen and tapped it once on the glass table. "We don't chase the cameras," she said. "But if they're already watching, we show them what excellence with backbone looks like." It was a Wednesday. Unremarkable on paper, overcast skies, light breeze, traffic humming its usual discontent. But for Maya Collins, it was the perfect day to test a promise. She pulled her old Honda Civic into the same discreet parking spot off Lexington Avenue. Same car, same crisp navy blazer, same silver bracelet around her wrist worn not for fashion, but for remembrance. 3 weeks had passed since the storm. 3 weeks since the silence shattered. 3 weeks since dignity stood its ground and won. Maya entered the showroom without fanfare. No press, no security detail, no camera crew trailing behind. Just her. The glass doors opened with their usual soft chime. Inside, the space looked familiar, but it felt different. The air was lighter. The employees stood straighter. And though no one gasped or whispered her name, Maya could feel it. They knew who they represented now. Near the center case, a new associate stood adjusting a tray of bracelets. Young, eager, probably hired after the incident. She looked up and saw Maya took in the modest blazer, the quiet poise, the lack of designer handbag. She didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled warmly. "Good morning, ma'am. Welcome to Vera Grace. Would you like to see anything in particular today?" Maya almost laughed, not from mockery, but from relief. She stepped closer. "I'd love to look at the Aurora collection." The associate, Elena, her name tag read, brightened. "Absolutely," she said. "One moment while I unlock the case. The necklace at the center is our founder's signature piece. It was designed to honor her grandmother." Maya's fingers paused on the glass. That necklace, that story, her story. But Elena didn't recognize her, not yet. She wasn't offering exceptional service because she knew who stood before her. She was offering it because it had become standard. And that, Maya realized, was the greatest legacy of all. Elena carefully unlocked the case with smooth hands and reverent timing, as if she were about to open something sacred. She lifted the velvet tray that held the Aurora necklace, the same one Maya had been denied weeks ago. The same one she had sketched years ago at her kitchen table, with nothing but a dull pencil and a dream no one else believed in. Elena placed it on the glass with pride. "It's one of our most celebrated designs," she said. "There's only 3 like it in the country. It was part of the Legacy series, launched about 6 years ago." Maya nodded, her voice soft. "It's beautiful." "Thank you," Elena said instinctively, then smiled awkwardly, realizing she hadn't made it. Maya leaned forward slightly. Do you know who designed this piece? Elena's hands paused just briefly as if she'd been tested unexpectedly. Then, with no hesitation, she replied, "Yes, Maya Collins. She's the founder and chief designer of Vera Grace. This was her tribute to her grandmother. I read about it during onboarding." Maya tilted her head, impressed. "You remember that?" Elena beamed. "It stuck with me. I liked that she built all this without giving up who she was." Maya's lips parted a quiet breath, somewhere between gratitude and disbelief. That sentence, "without giving up who she was," hit deeper than Elena could have known. Elena continued, "Some people think luxury has to be cold, but the way she designed this space, it's not just about money. It's about meaning." Maya looked at the necklace again, the stones catching the light like stars caught in glass. "Would you like to try it on?" Elena asked politely. Maya paused, then smiled. "No," she said gently. "It looks right, just the way it is." Elena nodded, not reading too far into the answer, just happy to be helpful. Maya looked at her one last time, really looked and saw something powerful. Not recognition, not fear, but respect, built into the process. She didn't have to explain herself, not this time. And that, more than any headline, was the win. Maya stepped back from the display, giving Elena a small nod of appreciation. "No questions?" Elena asked with a smile. Maya returned it, warm but reserved. "No questions, just thank you." Elena didn't know what she'd done, but she smiled anyway, the way people do when they sense something important just passed through them, even if they don't have the words for it yet. Maya walked slowly toward the exit, her heels soft against the polished floor. There was no fanfare, no final speech, no reveal. Just her, a woman in a navy blazer, moving like the ground beneath her was steady because she had made it so. As she reached the glass doors, Maya paused. For a moment, she stood in the same exact spot where Karen Doyle had once raised her voice, where Darius Cole had refused to act unjustly, where Naomi stood trembling, and where Andre stepped forward, where truth once trembled and then stood tall. She touched her wrist. The silver bracelet was still there, a little tarnished, a little crooked, perfect in all the ways that mattered. Maya adjusted it slightly, smoothing the clasp, aligning it against her pulse. Then she looked back, not at the diamonds, not at the displays, but at Elena helping another customer with quiet grace. At Naomi, now managing with purpose. At a space that no longer required her to speak for it because it now spoke for itself. She exhaled once, slowly, and stepped outside. The city greeted her with its usual indifference. Horns, wind, a bus passing too fast. But even that felt right because not everything needed to know what had happened inside. Some stories didn't need a megaphone. They just needed to exist and endure. And as Maya crossed the street, her reflection flickered briefly in the showroom's window. She didn't stop. She didn't wave. She didn't look back. Because she hadn't left the store. She had left the standard standing. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher, one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.